nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Where the exits are, have a motion to open the meeting.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion to open the public hearing on Cascade Mountain Lands.
So moved. Second.
Anybody here to speak about the Cascade Mountain Lands lot line adjustment? That's the first item on the agenda. George?
My name is George Branson. I live at 3498 Route 343 in Indian. I'm a little unclear about this, but I just wanted to ask, isn't this creating a flag lot? If it is creating a flag lot, then it shouldn't go up.
Okay. Anybody else want to speak? Okay, hearing none. Can I have a motion to close the public hearing on the Cascade Mountain Lands?
Madam Chair, may I interject?
Oh,
Did you want to close or did you want to put it open? Because we're still waiting for information from the applicant, mainly the driveway issue. And if you remember last time, Mr. Walsh also raised some issues regarding the gun club, which really have no impact on this one. That's a civil matter between owners. They did receive the necessary notifications. So, we're still waiting for some driveway information, if you recall. So you might want to, instead of closing the public hearing, adjourn.
okay, all right. So we haven't gotten any of the information that we asked for last time?
What we had asked for last time was a driveway profile and clarification of how access was going to be to the rear lots. We did not get that.
Okay.
So I can just speak on that. We were working on it in the office, we just wasn't ready in time for the submission, so.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, fair enough. And who is tasked with looking into the other issue that Jim raised?
To be honest with you, Judy and I started investigating it. There is apparently a hump on that. I won't speak, there's some issues related to it, so the assessor and the building inspector are reviewing the matter, because it doesn't show up and register properly in our records. We were able to ascertain that the president of the gun club, or the club, and I apologize, I don't know what the name of it is, did receive notifications and actually signed the green card. So it takes that issue off the table, and realistically in our code, this is a simple subdivision, so the fact that there's a gun club next door means nothing to us. In terms of that, they were probably notified, and if anything, it would be incumbent upon them to be respectful and protective of their neighbors, not the reverse. So I don't think there's anything more to report, other than the fact that unfortunately, Mr. Walsh opened a slightly small can of worms that is now being pursued by our building inspector and our assessor.
No, I don't want anyone, I don't want anybody to get hurt.
Understood.
My understanding from one of the officer owners of the property, my attorney work for the state, is the club is registered with the county, and you can direct your, anyone investigating it, they will take that.
Okay, no, last I checked, they were on it, right? Yeah. So we're good. And we did all we could, we did all we needed to do, and all we were obligated to do.
Okay, so we're gonna adjourn. We're gonna adjourn the public hearing to the next meeting, which would be May 28th. Presumably, you'll be able to get the materials into John in a week in advance of that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right.
And just for the clarification of the public, this is a lot line adjustment, not a subdivision. So it's making two non-conforming lots conforming. So just wanted to clarify that for the public.
Can you also speak to George's comments about the flag lot?
Yeah, so the flag lot, so this is right now, the subdivision, the parcels themselves, two of them do not have frontage along Cascade Mountain Road. So what the lot line adjustment does is it brings these lots into conformity. by providing them frontage along the road. Right now, they're just out in the middle of nowhere with no anchor to any roadway. So it's not creating any new lots, it's just reconfiguring 3 existing lots.
But isn't one a flag lot?
One is a flag lot because there's not enough frontage. Rather than, I'm going to speak for the board on this one, I guess, but rather than allow this lot to remain non-conforming, the board in their wisdom has granted the waiver to allow the flag lot to exist.
Well, the
Well,
board,
we have-
the
They don't
board
have
will
to-
grant.
Yeah.
To take it one step further, flag lots are permitted at the sole discretion of the planning board as part of the process, so long as they make a proper case in showing that a flag lot is warranted. So, to that end, number one is they were taking 2 non-conforming lots out of 3, and now making 3 conforming lots, all of which comply with the zoning provisions. In order to do that, they had a flag lot. The issue of how well a driveway gets accessed along that flag lot is the purpose of getting the profile and the additional information, so that, provided that it's adequate, you can take a look at it and in your judgment, issue the necessary authorization for 1 flag lot.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the terrain there, and the area is pretty steep. So when we're looking at this flag lot, I want to see if it's accessible or not. I'm very familiar with the area up there.
And the plan that you guys are gonna submit is gonna account for that, for your overlap in the lot property lines?
Our
Or
plan
a
is,
note or whatever? we
They have,
decide?
they have a note on the plat, and it needs to be refined, and there's a couple tweaks that they were gonna make to it.
Okay,
But there are basic notes on the plat that address those.
okay, so Peter, stuff needs to get it by May 21st.
April 21st?
May 21st.
Oh, okay. When did we decide the public hearing was again?
We're gonna adjourn it to the 28th.
Okay.
So if you guys can get your stuff in a week in advance, that would be May 21st.
All right.
Would the board like us to prepare a draft resolution? Do you think we're going to be potentially ready for that consideration?
If you get the plan by the 21st and you sign off on it, then you are, then I think, or if you get to review it, theoretically be in position on the 28th to approve.
Will the 21st give you enough time?
We'll make the time. Yes,
Because usually you have a 2-week rule
yeah.
for submissions.
The way my schedule works, I try to get to it the Friday before your meeting, or on or about there, so, yes, I'll fit it.
We
Fit it
do
meeting
have-
by the 21st.
We do have this middle deadline, but for these kinds of things, we've been given, when there's just little minor things that are outstanding that John needs to review, they call Jonathan Priest
Just checking without going.
just to get on the agenda.
Okay, he has enough time to look at these things.
All right. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
So, motion to open the regular meeting?
Second.
All in favor?
Uh,
All right, first up is Lands of Tower Hill subdivision. You wanna just do quick, where are we, then John, then Paul? then
Okay.
Laura?
365 Tower Hill. This is a 3-lot subdivision. The existing parcel is 165 acres. Lot 1 will become 45 acres approximately, Lot 2 will become 85 acres approximately, and Lot 3 will become 33 acres approximately.
Real quick, this was previously approved, went through the process, it was approved with conditions. The owner went back, reevaluated his position, and sought to modify one of the lots to allow, this was approved with a common driveway, to allow a future owner, should they so desire, to construct a driveway serving just that one lot. So they reconfigured the subdivision, they revised the plat, they prepared the necessary easements. I think both Paul and I signed off on them. They did put notes on the plat. We have a final plat, it's ready for consideration. So all the issues that you set forth and conditions for entertaining a resolution have been addressed. This one also had the peculiarity of two of the lots provide the appearance of flag lots. There was a rather lengthy discussion as part of the original subdivision. Rich and his folks made a case, and it was the determination of the board at that time that based on the case that was made, they didn't function as true flag lots, so there was no need for a waiver and the subdivision could proceed. Did I state that correctly?
100%.
Okay, so that's where we stand, Madam Chair, and you are ready to entertain the resolution that Paul has prepared.
Okay.
Yeah, and we did review the easements, and have provided comments today to Rennie, Rich, and the attorney for the applicant. There was one paragraph that needs to be changed to accurately reflect the 2025 subdivision rather than the 2023 subdivision. We'll look at that before the plat is signed, but we have a resolution that we drafted, added the same provision that had been in the 2023 resolution relative to the flag lots. And the board wants to consider the resolution and to recommend it.
Any questions or comments? Okay, please proceed.
Okay, and I would just read the now therefore.
Incorporate by reference and just read the whereas.
Now therefore be it resolved that pursuant to section 50.511, and this is the subdivision law, the planning board hereby approves with conditions, the minor subdivision plat for the project entitled Tower Hill subdivision prepared by Lanier Engineering, master revised 2025, and be it further resolved that upon satisfaction of the following conditions, planning board chairperson is authorized to stamp and endorse the minor subdivision plat. This will be the final plat approval. Plat shall be endorsed by the County Department of Health. Plat shall bear the authorized signature of the owner of the property. Plat shall be signed by Rennie Engineer. As required by the subdivision law, the applicant shall pay any outstanding invoices to the planning board's consultants incurred in connection with reviewing and processing the applications. Therefore, be it further resolved that pursuant to the subdivision law, the sale of lots of individual parcels of land shall proceed only after final plat approval has been recorded and other necessary permits approvals have been satisfied by the applicant. Be it further resolved that pursuant to the subdivision law within 5 business days of this resolution, copies of the minor subdivision plat shall be so certified by the town immediate code officer as being conditionally approved, a copy filed with the planning board, and a certified copy mailed to the applicant, which shall include a statement of such requirements which, when completed, will authorize the signing of the conditionally approved plat. Please note, this conditional approval of the plat shall expire within 180 days after this resolution unless all the conditions proceed to the execution of the plat have been certified as being complete. This time frame can be extended in periods of 90 days each. If the planning board determines in its discretion that the extension was timely made and that it is warranted by the particular circumstances. Conditional approval of the plat shall automatically terminate and be revoked without need for affirmative planning board action if all requirements for execution have not been undertaken within 180 days of the original approval. Be it further resolved that pursuant to the subdivision law and town law sections 276 and 279, the applicant shall record the final plats to the Dutchess County Clerk's Office within 62 days after the signing. The applicant shall promptly provide proof of recording to the planning board in the event that the plat is not recorded in the clerk's office within 62 days after its signing. The plat shall expire, and and further action shall require the submission of a new application, etc. Be it further resolved in accordance with the subdivision law, no changes shall be made to the final plat after approval has been given by the planning board and it has been signed by the planning board chairperson. If there are any such changes that occur, the plat shall be considered null and void, and the planning board shall institute proceedings to have the plat stricken from the county clerk's office record. Be it further resolved that if any condition or part of this approval resolution is annulled, the remainder shall be in full force and effect, and that within 5 days of the date of this resolution, the copy should be filed with the town clerk and mailed to the applicant. This resolution shall take effect immediately.
Thank you. Motion,
So moved.
second,
Second.
all in favor? Actually, Judy, I think you do.
Robert Boyle's union chairperson is absent. Rita Peak,
Yes.
deputy chairperson.
Yes.
John Stephanopoulos is absent. James Walsh.
Yes.
Walter Dietrich. Yes. Kenneth Popolski.
Yes.
Jamie Video.
Yes.
The motion passes. Thank you.
Just so you know, John resigned.
Yeah, they've taken him off on our,
Yeah.
they've been doing it.
I'm sorry.
He had a restaurant.
Did not know that. Now I do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much.
Thanks. Next up, Broughton Solar application.
Hello,
Hi.
hope everyone's having a good night.
Yeah.
So I'll just get started with the narrative here. So we're proposing an installation of a residential ground-mounted solar photovoltaic array.
Can you just identify your name and
Yeah, of
where you're
course,
from
I'm
for the
sorry.
record?
My name is Miguel Sines with Empire Solar Solutions. We install solar panels throughout the entire Hudson Valley area and now also New York State. The location in question is 390 Old Route 22 in New York. So we're looking to install this array at this address. The total system size is going to be 11.48 kilowatts, consisting of 28 REC panels that are rated at 410 watts per panel. They will be installed on the south end of the property in the side yard, covering a total of 577 square feet.
John, do you want to just give a little history?
I'll give a little history.
Thank you.
This project has a very long and colorful history.
Yes.
It originally appeared before you, consisting of two components. One was a subdivision, a minor lot line adjustment actually between two existing lots. And the second portion was for what was then known as a ground-mounted solar energy system. However, it exceeded the requirements and actually jumped to the next category, which was a non-permitted category. So they kind of went back, they retooled things. Eventually, they made application to the zoning board of appeals. Even in taking into consideration their lot line adjustment, they needed a couple area variances. They brought the size of the array down so that it now complies with the ground-mounted solar energy system under our code, and that it can be approved as an accessory structure. I can explain all the nuances, but I don't think it's appropriate. To bring you up to date, and I'm gonna leave out the whole saga of the map didn't get filed and all that. But the subdivision process has now been completed. The map has been filed. I have a copy of that filed map should anyone want it. The ground-mounted solar energy system is being placed on lot number 1. The town of Amelia Zoning Board of Appeals granted the area variances for several setbacks on December 16th of 2024. The resolution and findings are included in your record. You should have copies of them. Okay, we'll make sure you do.
We don't have copies, I mean,
Well,
I
actually-
don't have copies of anything.
Actually, well, and then I'll get to that explanation. So, the applicant is now seeking site plan approval from the planning board for the ground-mounted solar energy system. The application is arguably complete. This is addressing Nita's point. They made a submission back in December of 2024. That submission was a request in an email, plus all the supporting documentation that went to the ZBA, including the ZBA determination. So that was submitted back in December. Judy kind of worked with the applicant's representative, not this gentleman, a lady by the name of Courtney Roberts, to kind of complete the application, because it was like just hanging in space. So Courtney submitted on or about April 24th of 2025, the rest of the package. So in order to have a complete application, you had to go through the physical exercise of pulling these two things together and putting them together. And it took Judy and I a long time to figure out that's what this young lady intended. So when you put the two pieces together, you have a complete application.
Do we have a site plan?
Yes, we do. It's part of that package.
Okay.
We have several site plans, Madam Chair. I can show you. We have one on a tax map, we have one on the survey,
Okay.
we have all that. So, however, despite that fact, there are some issues that need to be resolved. The property is within 500 feet of a county highway. It therefore needs to be referred by you folks to the county planning department. It was referred by the ZBA, but this is a separate action, site plan approval. You must also make a similar referral to the county. We would suggest that this is type 2 action under seeker, requiring no substantive environmental review. We would recommend that you make that determination, preferably tonight. The ZBA resolution referenced planting trees near the west property line to screen the views. Judy and I did some research, and I shouldn't take any credit at all. Judy did a lot of research. And she provided me with the minutes, and in fact, there was no discussion of trees at the ZBA. In fact, one of the ZBA members actually entered it into the record. He went to the Delaware Hill Overlook with a pair of binoculars and couldn't see or find the site. Craig Meyer. So, how that got entered into the resolution, I don't know, but it seems like if you read the totality of the ZBA determination, you're not seeing this from anywhere. There's like power lines behind it and heavily treed. It's kind of like tucked away, and you can't see it from the adjacent town highway. But, and the last thing that's missing is we never received verification of the utility notification, which is a letter required. So the only actions you folks could take tonight would be to declare this a type 2 action and refer the application to county planning for their action. Did we miss something, Paul?
Anybody, any discussion, questions? No?
I guess the only thing I would add is, that once the board is comfortable with the application, and then a complete application is being referred. I don't know if you want to do it based on what John has indicated, but it could be referred after tonight. The second thing is a minor site plan approval. So the board has the discretion to not require a public hearing for it. I don't know if there's board interest. I know when there was another application for mounted solar, board members wanted to check out themselves the visibility issues or potential visibility issues. So I'm not sure what you want to do either for the next meeting or anticipated meeting in June in terms of thinking about whether or not you need to have a hearing, when you might want a resolution, that sort of thing.
But we wouldn't do any of that until we refer it to the county, right? Or would we
You
do it
would
this
have
way?
to get, yes, you'd still need to get the Dutchess County plan.
So the only thing we can do then is refer it to county.
You could do that, yes. Yep. And confirm that it's a type 2 action.
We need a motion on that?
But does anybody have any input into whether or not we want to not
I mean, considering that it sounds like we understand it's not visible.
It's pretty basic.
It's pretty basic, and it's going through the ZBA process, they've had their own public hearing. My understanding is that no one really had anything to say. This is kind of like a de minimis one. If I were asked, I would suggest that there would be no requirement for a public hearing here.
They took 2 pages and say it's okay. Right.
Yeah, and just for those who aren't familiar, one of the criteria that ZBAs look at is whether there'll be an environmental impact in granting variances. So that's something that the ZBA would be considering.
So do we need a motion to refer this particular issue or concern to the,
Just a simple motion
I'd
authorizing Judy to make the referral.
like to make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Then the second part would be type 2 action. Confirm that it is a type 2 action. Again, a simple resolution.
Simply motion, Josh.
So moved.
A second. Before we just circulate this to the county, can you send us a full, this board a full package of what is going to the county, just so that we have it?
Just take a vote.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
All in favor?
All in favor?
And quite honestly, the public hearing, you can defer
Yeah.
until we hear back from the county. But at least the seed has been planted, and you know when it comes up, that's where we go. The only thing I would suggest that might be appropriate to authorize, the county has 30 days, so they probably won't get back to us by the 28th. So I would put it out for June, the first meeting in June, because I think the 28th is pretty close. And,
June 11th.
We could draft a resolution in anticipation of that.
And the condition,
June 11th.
the condition, the ZBA condition of approval, I guess can you make sure that in the resolution you reference that? Inconsistency, just so that our paperwork is clear. All right, and in the meantime, you guys will provide the other materials that we need, or that John needs, the verification of utility notification.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, Cascade Creek subdivision. Okay,
We're ready when you are.
have at it. Peter.
Alrighty, hello again, everyone. Peter Singer, Rennie Engineering, representing the applicant, which is Hudson River Housing. Here tonight to discuss the Cascade Creek subdivision, which is a conservation subdivision, where the requirements in the code outline that 50% of the land must be preserved as conservation open space, and in exchange for a higher density of allowable lots that are allowed to be created. As we discussed at the last planning board meeting, the conservation analysis document, which is the basis of the conservation finding statement, was generally complete from the planning board engineer's perspective, except they wanted us to add additional information on how the utilities, which are proposed to be located in the open space areas, will not detract from the conservation value of the land. As I stated in the revised report that was provided, we do not believe that the utilities will detract conservation value. In fact, in many cases, we think it will enhance conservation value and longevity of the project site, considering that with the utilities located in public open space that will be administered by an HOA, those utilities will be ensured to be adequately maintained. They will be under closer monitoring because the HOA is responsible for them, creates a sense of community, and through the implementation of a series of wells that are going to be proposed in the open space, provide enhanced protection and buffering per New York State or DCPOH rules and regulations. So with that, I believe we addressed all of the board's comments and concerns regarding the conservation analysis. And so I believe now we've entered the conservation finding stage where we are going to discuss, which is the final step of the conservation analysis, which will allow the applicant to proceed with preliminary subdivision review, which I believe it's in everyone's best interest that we get to that stage, being that it allows us to produce more detailed documents for the board, for the public's benefit, and for the applicant's benefit. So hopefully, we're looking forward to an adoption of the conservation finding statement tonight, so we can begin our submissions for preliminary subdivision review for the board. With that, happy to answer any questions or comments from the board.
John?
Okay, so, I did receive Peter's, revisions. I could spend a lot of time wordsmithing them. However, in terms of what we asked for, he sufficiently covered it. And I think, at least in my perspective, you can buff it as many times as you want, but I now believe there is sufficient information in there to consider conservation findings. And on that basis, Paul and I worked together to put together conservation findings. I know, Madam Chair, you issued some comments. I did look at them. I probably had many of the same, but I read the document focusing on what I needed to do to develop findings. I don't disagree with one of your comments, which was, this probably ought to be sent to the applicant and said, here, make these changes and resubmit it, because it's going to be the final document. So here, I'll make sure Judy gets you your comments that we've received, and you can buff your document.
Understood. This is for the conservation analysis.
That's correct, sir.
Okay.
Just to clarify, it's mostly sort of inconsistencies with labeling, things are in appendix A, but they're not there, or how things are described, they're just things that just, dot your i's, cross your t's.
I also think some of the verbiage is feel-good verbiage and not appropriate to hear like you're trying to sell. And I'll point that out.
Well, it's not hard to
Okay,
feel good about this
you know,
subdivision.
It's like spin,
Mm-hmm.
so I'll go through that. I have quite a few questions.
You can do whatever you want.
Okay, I'm just saying. So I went back to the zoning law, and some of these might not be appropriate for this, they might be our next step down the road. If they are, just tell me and I'll move on. It's going to be excavation of an area in excess of 5,000 square feet, that's going to be outside of the conservation. The overlay and all of that, it's that we're prohibited from any excavation in an area in excess of 5,000 square feet.
What section of code is it?
Okay, it's 121, 14E, dash B, dash 1.
So many. Which, in particular, which is the header on that?
It's the stream.
Oh, the stream corridor? Yes, okay.
Might as well give you a couple at the same time so you can go through it.
Yep.
Clear cutting of more than 10,000 square feet of vegetation on the parcel. Not
Yeah, so everything, just for your benefit, everything outside of here is the stream corridor overlay. So what we're proposing is that everything gets located outside of that. And that, just for the board's benefit, it doesn't restrict it, it just requires site plan review. So that is the process we're going to proceed with next. But right now, we've proposed to keep all that stuff out of the SCO.
Where is the hill on your?
The hill, the knoll is right here, in this forested clump area. That's where it's in the middle of the site.
Because that, from what I'm looking at in your slopes table, it goes up to 15% grade. That's going to come, it's right there, right into the conservation area. I just want to.
sorry, what was that again?
If you look away, you pointed to the middle.
Yep.
Highest part is about 40 foot, right when I looked at this. Grade dropping down,
Right here.
right into, dropping down, right into the, stream part of it. So I'm just concerned about drainage going off there, and since it's already.
If I may, you're starting to get into those areas that are next steps.
All right, I'll wait
And,
for the
and,
next
and,
step.
and let me put it to you this way. They are very valid concerns. They won't be dismissed, but right now, we're trying to narrow down the conservation findings, and what you're pointing out are issues, there's gonna be a lot of drainage issues to deal with here, because the water has to be treated before it enters the creek and so on and so forth. There are house setbacks and other things that we need to explore, during the process. You know, you might want to keep, you know, for instance, keep building envelopes, if you will, to use a term nobody likes, off the steep slopes. You know, so there are issues that we can deal with through the subdivision process, but we kind of have to get there.
Okay, so the subdivision process, I'll take up my particular road,
Yes.
and that's okay.
Yes.
Now let's talk about verbiage.
I'm not going there.
It's about spin and branding and things I love to do. Your, section 4. Proposed, no, these are not ours, this was copied and cut from their document and pasted directly into ours. I have a problem with that, because, I mean, I don't know, for instance, creates a common public space with conservation areas preserved for their conservation value that can be enjoyed and appreciated by community members. We're writing that, we don't know that.
I agree with you.
Yeah, that's-
I mean, it's like, it's gonna be the greatest place ever in the history of
Okay,
Maine.
all right, let's,
I provided that.
whoa, 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 whoa.
No hyperbole.
If I may, so, comments on the conservation analysis, and if those, that's their document, it can be an advocacy document, we worked in the past to try and trim that back a little bit. If the board is in agreement that the conservation analysis with any changes to that document, which you need, then we can talk, you guys can talk as a board, and we can trim this back.
If it says Town of Amelia Planning Board, Cascade Creek subdivision conservation findings, and you put their verbiage right in there, and you're saying that is ours, this is not our verbiage.
No, that's, and that was for your discussion, so.
That's,
But the draft, the draft, I did not see this section until I received this. And maybe it was there, but when I printed it out, yeah.
But I
I think we should be, shouldn't we be
Yes.
considering this?
Yeah.
that's what we're doing tonight.
Okay.
That was
Well,
our
I'm
goal.
going to finish my
But-
comments
but
if we're
that's-
going to be doing it tonight.
But that, Peter has nothing to do with that. That's your
Okay.
discussion among the board.
Well, other than this language was provided by
By
Peter.
Peter, it's.
And that can be provided by them as.
To be honest with you, they basically, when I added some of these things, they were kind of summarized, and yes, I took the whole section, put it in there, knowing full well that we'd end up tearing it down, as we've done in the past, because I like Mr. Paulsky, some of the language was a little flowery for me,
It's
but I
not
needed a starting point.
It's not just flowery, it's not objective and factual,
Yeah.
which we just want to have things that are objective. and
That's
factual,
right.
And that's your board's discussion about what you would like to do to this before you're ready to adopt it. That's our conversation.
Okay, so how do we proceed where either we give our notes and we edit it, or we pass it on, so that it's our section, that is our comments here?
What I would suggest is we can actually go through some of that right now, and we can try and, do
Rework it to
that.
your
Let
satisfaction?
me finish the, yeah, and we can do whatever editing that you require. That may be the most efficient way to do it, because then you're all here and we can have a conversation. We provided this for comment
Is it possible for us to take this home and do a pass of it and send it in? Because of writing with 5, 10 people at a table is never, a writer's room does not get a lot done.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's up to you all on how you want to proceed. I think, you know, the idea was to present this as a draft to the board for comment. And we had an earlier draft provided to you last week, and then this additional edits from John and Red, you know, that you provided yesterday. So, however you want to proceed, I think the applicant, you know, the goal is to, the goal of the conservation findings is for you all to identify the lands that need to be conserved. And that's what we tried to do. Some of the additional language that John has added in goes to the issue of the utilities, and the utilities not, you know, affecting the conservation value. So some of the stuff we can quickly.
I can make it really easy, lose all of the bullet points.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we all agree that putting the utilities in the conservation easement doesn't negatively affect the conservation value. I don't know if I agree with that, but it's a pretty big presupposition to put in that, we all agree with that.
Well,
I don't happen to agree with it.
yeah, I mean, what does it, physically, what are we talking about in terms of these utilities being within the conservation easement? And the
Without having it fleshed out, you're going to have at least probably 2 water supply wells in those areas. You're going to have the subsurface disposal system not in an open space area, but it's kind of one of the secondary areas. It's being preserved for mostly soils in that vicinity, and then they will probably be replacing some of their stormwater management facilities.
Electrical bolts?
Electrical vaults will probably be closer to the homes. They probably will not be on that side of the road. And we wouldn't know that until probably final subdivision, because the utility won't give you that information until you have the final plat.
If I may, can we go to section 4 in red?
Yeah,
Go to the first bullet point, provides uniform ownership of infrastructure, ensuring its adequate maintenance and operation. I don't think that's necessary.
I think you can take out all the bullets.
All the bullet points, from what I'm seeing, create common space that can be enjoyed and appreciated by community members. That's not necessary for this document.
Right.
Consolidating
All of
infrastructure.
that,
All of that goes,
Right.
reduces residential lot like this.
Right.
Okay.
the only thing that I would suggest adding is you have so I would take out all the bullets, I would take out everything after conservation value of lands, period. And so everything from but rather to the end, I would take out, because that's not relevant to what you're doing, okay? But what I would suggest is there is a need for a sentence after will not impair the conservation value of lands to address Jamie's question.
That's right.
You know, and concern that it may be inconsistent with the conservation value. So how would we address that, John, if you suggest?
I've got to think it through. I understand what he's asking, and I don't have an easy
I
answer.
mean, could one not just say that the applicant proposes that it does not?
They're supposed to be your findings looking at what's presented to you.
And the other thing too is your findings get changed as you go through the secret process.
That's true.
So what I was kind of hoping here is, it's not uncommon to overlap public utilities with open space. The reason I say that is, for instance, a well comes with a 100-foot radius of definite ownership, and it comes with a 200-foot radius of sanitary protections. Usually you put those in lands that are not going to be developed, that are going to be preserved, that are going to be left in a relatively natural state, so that you preserve your water supply. So one would presume that those are overlapping. if you were to take, for example, just by way of reference, if you take Silo Ridge, all the water supply wells are located in conservation areas.
I think that's true for a well, I guess, and as you said, there may not be an electrical vault in there.
Right.
I would not agree if you put an electrical vault in the middle of an open space.
No, I can understand that, and as we go through the subdivision process, we can make that statement, that all the, utilities would have to be on the outside. Usually what ends up happening is they'll bring their utilities in and they'll put terminals between lots.
Right.
And so they would normally be on the opposite side of the road. To some degree, you can mandate that, but it falls on the utility as well, so I'm a little reluctant to say you can guarantee it, but.
But fundamentally, the question that was asked at the last meeting was, please make a case that the utilities being located within a conservation easement do not affect their conservation value. And it sounds to me like that case at least has not been made to the satisfaction of JD and Kent. If I'm putting words in your mouth, say it.
From my perspective, knowing what I know, I didn't think they did that bad of a job. The language is a little flowery, but it would, if I was sitting in their shoes, I'll be candidly, I probably would have done the same thing. You have to look at the values that you're preserving. The septic system is a low-grade system. The surface of the ground will not look any different when it's finished. It protected from development other than the septic system. And if you were to looking to put it someplace that's not going to be disturbed, that's kind of where you put it, in the open space. And so it's uncommon to do that, because it keeps people away, it's under ownership of the HOA, it's all guaranteed. Stormwater management, you try to keep them near the points of discharge, because you can create freshwater, you can create additional wetlands, you can create bioretention areas that are in keeping with preserving the stream and the stream corridor and not resort in a lot of disturbance. So they're open space features, and they're subject to regular and routine operation and maintenance requirements. So, from my standpoint, if you pulled out a lot of the flowery language, they do make that case. So, to me, it serves as a starting point.
Yeah, I mean, this area is supposed to be, conserved, permanently conserved, and it needs to be vegetated and basically reflect the natural state. I think some of the points you made about utilities, like a well or a septic system requiring, radius around them that's protected, and the fact that these wastewater and wells will serve the subdivision in perpetuity. Those sort of things can be added to this that might show that it won't, the conservation value of these things won't be impaired. But I think those are a couple of sentences that need to be added anyway in order to fulfill what is required for purposes of your findings. I don't know if that information is provided in the record. If it is, then I think we can probably do it from there, but John?
Just based on what's just happened, I think then we should know what Ken suggested. That the five of us should review the document again, and then we come up with what we think should be written for us, and give it back to you guys. It should not be decided tonight. I'm totally against it.
Yeah, but it sounds like they need more information, a couple sentences that are added here.
What ultimately it appears as though this document needs to be beefed up. I would prefer to wait to see what everybody's comments are, and then if it still requires something else, we can add to it. I think if you read the conservation analysis and look at what they have proposed, I think most of the information you may be looking for is in there, but as Ken said, some of the language is a little flowery and self-serving, but the basic technical background is in here. It's just kind of, you have to really pull it out.
Right, these, I think the guidance from the board is clear that the bullets go, and what we need is some additional information to address how this will not impair the conservation value.
I think that's right, I think you probably have to define the utilities you're talking about in the conservation.
And I think you're right.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think what we basically have to do is be specific, more than the document.
Because of well, there's a, very rational argument for, or again, and you just picking an obvious one, a utility wall, less so.
It's what we did in Trout Tech, so, I mean, this is the board.
Oh, okay, I just wanted to say what I think where we're going, if we can add to this document and just make it very clear that there's no hardscape utility areas, that it's basically the use of green infrastructure type practices. When it comes to stormwater, everything you're gonna see is gonna be green, grass covered,
I think that's,
and the purpose
that's
of,
the fundamental.
the wells are in that for protection, just like John
Right, I
said.
think that's the fundamental.
We'll dive back into this document, especially if we get those comments. We'll add that in to make sure you know you're not getting paved surfaces, you're not getting utility corridors,
Metal
some
boxes,
swath cut
exactly.
through, yeah, we get what you're saying. Thank you.
And any other comments the board wants to provide, we can try to build those in as well. If we're successful in addressing that, would the board like a draft resolution for approval? The findings, we can get them to reveal to the next meeting.
I don't have an issue with it. So Ken, the type of things Ken was edging around asking, that's for the next phase.
Let's move on to the next step so we can
Right.
get into the substantive.
That's what we want as well, so.
Okay, the other thing we did do in, at least one, maybe both of the conservation findings that the board has done before is added in a sentence to make clear that the conservation findings can be changed based on the seeker review. So it's not like this is.
And that's already in here.
Right.
So, yeah, so,
Good job, Paul.
let's give me a call. if you have any questions.
All right,
Okay,
so, we'll transmit our comments on the conservation analysis to you. We will review, the findings that are in front of us. We have this electronically, this new version with.
Yeah.
Yes, I got it.
Next people have
I think it was sent around in Word format.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect, all right, so we
Yes.
will, let's commit to getting something back to, John and Paul by,
Well, can I suggest, does somebody want to put the non-hardscape language before?
Well,
we
they're gonna do it, and we're gonna do it too, because I imagine all
So
nine
maybe
of us.
circulate that,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
we work on that.
good plan, okay. And then, do we want to have a motion to authorize Paul to prepare a resolution for the May 28th meeting?
So moved.
All in favor?
Uh,
Right, but that's not a guarantee, okay, just so that we're clearing on expectations. It's not a guarantee that you're gonna have approval at the next meeting. What it means is, if all of this is sorted and the planning board is okay with the verbiage and the conservation findings, then we will, vote on the resolution.
You said you may hold it, but also get us your comments.
John has,
I'll make sure, I'll send them out.
yeah, okay, all right, thanks very much, guys.
Thank you very much, everyone.
All right. So last time, we talked briefly about having public comment. No, general public comment. And we agreed that we would allow people to do that, so, we'd rather, Judy, do you want us to do minutes and stuff first?
Sure.
Okay, so let's do minutes first. Judy.
Sure, 4-9,
I submitted changes.
you did, I mean, with drafts that are on the table.
Okay, anybody else have any changes to the 4/9 meeting minutes?
If you need.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve
They
the
work
minutes?
together. They work together.
Oh, they're very good. They're always very good.
They constructive criticism.
They're always great. A motion to approve the minutes of April 9th,
So moved.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right, minutes from 4/23,
So moved. I'll second the motion.
Going upstairs on these ones.
you were there, yeah, correct, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Right, perfect. You're up.
Okay, this is,
New
I don't
business.
even know if this is under our purview or not, but about 6 days ago, the president signed an executive order to lose the Energy Star program that's been around for a while and saved trillions of dollars and made the environment a little bit better. Our town code, I looked at today, and it requires that Energy Star, it's in the code, I'll give you the section. I didn't bring my code, but not zoning, but the town code requires Energy Star compliance. Can we ensure that projects coming to us still use the Energy Star program? That's something I'd like to look into.
Sign the
I
executive
give you
order, Jeff.
something, yeah. Well, yeah, you can just sign it. I'm sorry, I've got a sharp.
I can give you a quick comment just from a professional. I think what you're gonna find is that the energy code already, the new energy code requires more than even Energy Star. So when a new building is designed, it has to meet the new standards, which is even higher, so, and the standards keep getting higher and higher, especially when it comes to HVAC. There's new refrigerants that are out, and over the next few years, you're gonna keep seeing them change until 2030, where there's a few different changes down the pipe. So there's a lot of change there, but it's all in the energy code, so I think you are protected.
Thank you.
Judy, can you go, before we open up for public comment, can you go click through the 28 agenda items? Or at least what we know will be on the agenda?
Okay. So I have a new application for 426 Old Route 22, Open Space Institute on Howard Road. You spoke to the person that's going to get in touch with you.
Yes, so she's gonna get on the 11th, Hollyhock Foundation.
Oh,
Are we talking about the same thing, the trail? Hollyhock Foundation?
no, this is just a lot. I haven't gotten anything from that person. I thought you spoke to this person too, okay.
No.
This is totally different. This is a lot line thing for Open Space Institute, Jerome, it's the landowner.
Okay, lot line adjustment,
Yep.
okay,
Silo condominium
yeah.
and King's Spell.
And Cascade Creek subdivision and
Okay.
Cascade Mountain lot line.
That's for you, just for background there, okay.
Right. Okay, great. Public comment, so here's the ground rules. 2 minutes, identify yourself, only try to stay as positive as you possibly can. And, within boundaries. And, more is not more. So like if somebody's already kind of made the comment, cool, you don't need to reiterate stuff over and over again. All right, so, who's up?
Kenny Merritt, 60 Cascade Road. I'd like to say, first of all, thank you very much for the change you have made to the project. Having said that, this whole conservation subdivision thing, the way that they're going about it, I feel is a complete, I'm just gonna say, bastardization of the law, the way it's written. I don't feel that it's intended for a 28-lot subdivision to be built in a field that is obviously, in their own words, has been continually farmed since 1936. It has been proposed to have development on it in the past. It's been shot down in the past. It's been basically untouched land in the middle of a very touched part of the median. So in the past, there's obviously been a willingness to leave that as a wide open field. The conservation areas that they're doing, I understand the wells, I don't understand the septic systems. Septic systems disturb everything. You're digging massive trenches, especially with the size of the system that they're gonna have to put in for 28 houses. I know what my front yard looked like when it was built in 2015. It was completely destroyed. The expansion areas, we couldn't park the crane when we set the house, my house, on the expansion area. It had to be completely undisturbed soil. Otherwise, the Board of Health told us we couldn't do anything. They have the expansion zone down next to the stream, so if one of these systems fails, then the primary zone, they're gonna go right down next to the stream, which is one of the main concerns we have to begin with. The wells, you're not just gonna have a pipe sticking out of the ground. It's gonna just be a pipe, it's gonna be a whole building around. So again, I don't understand how that is an undisturbed piece of land. If it's just the well and you wanna run the pipe somewhere else and then pump it, I get that, but you're gonna have to have some sort of infrastructure to get down to there to test that water, maintain it, and you're gonna have some sort of storage unless you're gonna put it, I'm assuming possibly well tanks in each house. So, there's that. I guess the whole system seems like it's designed for more of a local farmer who's got a couple acres. I want to build some housing for my people, not this. This whole thing, 28 houses on a 24-acre lot, seems absolutely ridiculous. If you were to do that anywhere else, it would be 20. I personally tried to get some stuff done in my house, but I have to stay 35 feet from my property line. Want to build a garage, you gotta be 35 feet from the property line. I am literally abutting that piece. It's zoned the same as my house. I don't understand how just because, oh, we're gonna set aside 50% of the land over here, even though we're gonna utilize it, that all of a sudden they can put stuff kind of wherever they feel like they wanna put it on the lot. Small setbacks, high density housing. I just don't understand. As far as the conservation findings have gone, I don't understand why they couldn't just write in there, we will not build structures in there. Seems to me pretty, I'm not a lawyer, seems to me pretty simple wordage. We will not build a structure excluding a well in that area. That's that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Anybody else? George?
Hi, George Costanza again. I just would think that you should consider the soil quality. From my brief look at it, this is two types of soil that are excellent, Topeka and Wappinger. As they say, they've been farmed for many years. What should be conserved on this piece of land is the soil, what's underground, not just what's above. And I think it should be conserved for farming. I don't agree with this as a conservation project.
Anybody else?
Should I say something? I mean, I guess what Mr. Merritt just said touches on what was in my head, which is a 50% concept, which is my concern around this document. And I'll agree to the conservation, to the utilities and the conservation portion, which is the 50% conservation easement is meant to be 50% conservation. What you're effectively doing by allowing these utilities to be inside of it is saying you can conserve less than 50%. You would be at a lesser number of houses if you required the applicant to put utilities in non-conserved 50%, which would bring down the density. And if I'm understanding what we're doing, we're effectively drafting a resolution that agrees to not do that for the next board meeting. And I don't know that I agree with that personally. I don't know the rest of the board feels about it, but I feel like I've been restraining myself on something that I was a little unsure of it, and now I'm sure of it. Like, that isn't what isn't intended, I don't think, by that law. And now we're just foregoing that with a resolution potentially.
The resident, this is more of an overview. You come across Route 7, you make a left on 22, you drive from 22 about 70 miles, and you don't see anything of this density on the left or the right. And then you come up to Amelia, and you'll see a dense group of houses. And then you drive another 50 miles, and you don't see it again until you're just up. And that fundamentally and existentially is the problem. And we can talk about conservation. We can talk about how to mitigate those conservation problems. But I think there's an existential problem, which is 70 miles without a housing component. And
That's not correct though,
Yeah.
because there's, Dover has one now.
okay,
And there's, I drive 22,
okay,
three
so
times a week, both ways, there's a lot, and it's
this dense,
maybe not quite this dense, but maybe even something, Brewster,
Brewster.
more.
okay, but I'm talking about from the Vermont,
Okay.
from Route 7.
But I'm talking about, that these are all wonderful things to talk about, and we should discuss it. But the city's moving north, you want to make it done right, you're not going to stop it, is all I'm saying.
Well,
I know you don't want to hear that, that's fine.
I'm not even talking about something that is a matter of opinion. I'm just talking about, there's a law that says the conservation, you get special density permissions if you have preserved at least 50% of the land. What it doesn't allow you to do without an approval of the planning board is put the utilities into the conservation portion. And that has the net effect of, if you allow that, creating more density than you could otherwise have. And, you know, the questions of the city moving north and all that, you know, are probably in a lot of ways bigger than us. But this is an action of this board ultimately to allow those things that will allow for more density into the conservation portion of it. And I just think that if we're going, and maybe majority of the board will think that's fine. And maybe there's precedents where we are triangulated into having a problem if we don't. I don't know. I mean, you know, it's what lawyers and engineers are for. I just know it feels like a circumvention of what is intended to keep the density down even in a conservation project like this.
I'm reasonably sure that I'm not 100% sure that the code doesn't allow this, but I'm pretty sure that's what John's looking for right now.
No, I think the code does allow it, but again, what you're doing is identifying based on what's proposed, whether they're conserving more than 50% of the land, and whether,
He's just gonna
Yeah.
the code section.
There-
Just give the code
There is
section.
an actual specific section of the code, it's 121-20, period K, subsection 3, subsection B.
yeah,
Yep, so I'll run it again. 121-20,
Just give the section that's it.
K,
yeah,
No, he doesn't want to hear.
no,
Ken wants to hear it.
I want to hear. Thank you.
Okay.
we can-
3B.
But can you let Paul finish?
Yes.
Yeah, I was trying to make the point that, you know, your purpose is in identifying the lands that most need to be conserved. And you've gone through that discussion, and that's the basis for the findings you have. The missing element, and I think you hit it right on it, is adding to the utility discussion, because that can't impair the conservation value of the lands. And that demonstration is not made here, right? So that's what we need to add, and if it gets to your satisfaction, then you can do a resolution that would approve the findings, but then you go on to the whole, the whole seeker review and the whole subdivision.
And I guess I think the point Mr. Mayor made was good, because it was in my head of, how do you pump that septic system without disturbing the land?
In point of fact, I understand what the gentleman said. Working on broken septic system, pump the left. But to Peter's point, when you just read you your law, it says the conservation easement shall protect conservation values identified in the conservation analysis. It shall prohibit residential, industrial, or commercial use of the open space land, parents, except in conjunction with agricultural, forestry, and recreation, close parents, and shall not be amenable to permit such use. Access driveways, local utility distribution lines, subsurface wastewater disposal systems, trails, temporary structures for outdoor recreation, and agricultural structures shall be permitted on the preserved open space land, provided they do not impair the conservation values of the land.
Well, that's what we're talking
And
about.
that's what you're talking about.
That's
So
exactly,
the case,
yeah.
the case has to be made that they are not impairing the conservation values of that land.
Yeah. You identified, and, gentlemen who spoke, same thing. New issue, there's missing pieces here that need to be filled in. That's the homework that the applicant has, and that John and I have, to bring back to the board. And whether or not it satisfies you, that'll be the discussion.
So I would suggest that, you guys, the more detailed the better, to understand what is going in that conserved land, and how do you address things like, how do you pump the septic? Because I would suggest that a septic truck having it back through there into the middle of the conservation easement might be considered impaired.
There will be no septic tanks in the actual easement. Each house will have its own
Okay.
septic. So that would be in the urban portion of it.
Yeah, so the more information we can have.
Yeah, we can,
Unfortunately, right now, we're just limited by the requirements of the analysis itself. We happily provide all the infrastructure, utility design, but that we can't actually provide that until the finding statement's adopted. Otherwise, we're planning on detailing it out, we're required to do so.
But you guys can talk about it.
we can add that.
Rich understands the burden that is in front of you right now, and because we can't adopt conservation findings until we have more information.
And we're gonna give you a little snippet of a narrative of what's in, say, our head for engineering, and how it's gonna be. Yeah.
And then if it doesn't play out, if you make these findings and it doesn't play out during your secret review,
Right.
open ball.
Can I
Yeah.
suggest, Chairman, that it just feels not right to adopt the resolution now, draft the resolution for adoption at the next meeting. It feels like a fait accompli, as opposed to a genuinely thoughtful process that,
I just feel a little,
Yeah.
Well, so there is
The
a
only thing I would say though is, we can't move on to get to the real substitute. If we make those changes today, I think, let's go from 30,000 feet, now let's dive down and say, this, as long as we're in agreement with the language that he's adding about the utility.
the value, conservation.
Conservation value.
It's just being prepared in case you want to, in case you're satisfied.
But I'm,
Yeah, you can put it off to the following meeting, or, you may have other questions. It's up to you guys, though. Yeah.
And I believe a lot of the board's questions are addressed within this document. I really encourage the board to give it a thorough read. Despite all the flowery language, I do go into how the utilities would protect certain aspects of the site, again, enhanced protections, things of that nature. So again, I just encourage the board to read the document, because personally, I think this subdivision is a good thing for town of Amenia. This is the public comment stage, so so I'm allowed to be flowery. I just really think it's important to provide this housing opportunity for people that don't have the means that everyone else does. A lot of the neighbors along the property have similar sized subdivision lots to the same level of density. They're off of Cascade Road. They, but I'm not gonna go into it.
Yeah, take a drive. I'm sure you have.
I have.
Okay, it's not the same size lot.
But that being said, I'm not even sure that's at this stage the purview of the board, really. It's, right, we call balls and strikes against code.
You gotta demonstrate how the utilities will not affect the conservation value of the lands that you're proposing to protect. Not anything else in terms of how it provides value to the community.
And I think just to put a point on your, the preparation of the resolution, again, it'll be there for you, there is no guarantee that we will adopt the resolution on the 28th. It is just, we've just had a motion, it was approved by this board to allow, to advise Paul to prepare it. If you are conflicted about that and want to reconsider that motion, we can do that.
I'm only conflicted about it because I know there are very strong opinions in this town for and against this project. And I would imagine, and I genuinely don't think it's my job, at least in the context of sitting on this board, to make a judgment for or against it on macro other considerations. But I do believe that some people might feel, look at this board rushing it through, as opposed to taking it step by step. And I don't know where this all ends, but I don't want people to feel like, oh, those board members, they wanted the project, they didn't want the project, and that was really my concern, okay, was the optics. And another 2 weeks in this scale and scope and the magnitude of this project felt like that was worth affording the public who might have a concern with it. That was actually my concern.
Okay,
My comments were only because of Ken's comment.
No, I know.
I'm not saying I'm for or
I-
against.
yeah.
No one knows how I feel in this.
It's a mystery.
Would it be
I
helpful
don't know,
if,
there's lots of questions still that have to be.
would it be helpful if Paul gave us a little snapshot into what comes next?
I think that would be
That would be
great.
incredibly.
That would be
Why don't
incredible.
you give us a little primer on, give everyone a little primer on what happens next?
okay, so, once the board adopts conservation findings, at the same time, you would essentially invite the applicant to submit a preliminary plat to the board, for consideration. And at that point, the seeker process will commence in earnest. And I believe this would be a type 1 action, right, John?
Correct.
Yep.
I think they've already typed it.
Yep, and at that point, the board would probably want to seek lead agency status as the secret lead agency. So we would circulate the application to all of the other agencies that have permits or review authority over the project. And if no other agency objects, you become the secret lead agency, and we would be anticipating getting from the applicant different information about potential impacts of the project.
They're gonna need to prepare a full environmental assessment form. You've already suggested to them that there were certain peripheral expansions you'd like to see, notably a traffic study and some other evaluations. So I would suspect, once they get to that phase, Peter and Rich are going to package a full environmental assessment form with supporting documentation. Some they've already done, the Noiki analysis of the stream and the native species. That would all be bundled into a document. Preliminary plat requirements, it sounds kind of minor, but you also need the supporting documentation that goes with it. So we would see such things as the intersection designs in preliminary fashion. You'd see the road profiles. You'd get a sense of what their thinking was on the utilities. So in other words, as Richard said, there's different ways to do community septics. This is a community septic. Some people do community septics with septic tank, on each individual lot. I live in a community with a community septic tank. The septic tank and the pumping station associated with it are located in the road right. They expanded the road right of way to accommodate that particular utility. But we will get a sense of that. That's all part of their preliminary plat application. So now those things that you're starting to think about start to be crystallized. They need that layout where their stormwater is going to go, how it's going to go. That's all going to depend on the roads and grading and so on and so forth. It won't be the final details, but there'll be enough details. They have to submit under your code. They also have to submit a basic SWIP so we understand what the stormwater management facilities are going to be. So the reason we need to get to the next step is right now, essentially, I view it, you have a skeleton with basically a narrative that says, this is what we want to build on the skeleton. The next important thing is building what goes on the skeleton.
That's right. And the details, and as part of that too, then, you can always come back to the conservation findings and say, as part of your secret review, and amend them based on the additional detail that's provided. You can amend, the project may get tweaked, even in these conservation areas, to pull things out that aren't acceptable. I mean, so that process can all occur. This is just really, I like the way you describe it. It's kind of the skeleton saying, these are the areas we want to conserve, and that'll probably continue to be the theme throughout, I would imagine, the theme throughout the review of the project, making sure that that actually happens.
And two questions about that. One, is it true in your experience, or both of your experience, that what we're approving now, this environmental statement, it would be extraordinarily unusual, if not unheard of, for a project to not have that phase, not have that document approved? I mean, fundamentally, it's our obligation, once we're comfortable, to approve that document and move forward to the
Yeah,
process.
it's the initial stage
Right.
of the process, because also then, you didn't get to that, but as you get that documentation, the more detail gets flushed out, at a certain point, you say, okay, we have a complete application here, and then we have a public hearing. The public has their opportunity to participate and to weigh in on the project, which may have been modified already, based on some of the review that you guys undertake.
And then
If I may, Jamie,
Please,
just
go ahead.
go one step further. One of the interesting things is, the way your code is written, your conservation analysis is not a binding document. So in other words, it's basically a starting point. And your code is fairly specific, and Paul repeated the language in what you looked at tonight, is you have the right, as the secret process goes through, to amend and change. If you get details and say, oh, we thought it doesn't make sense, we gotta change this. We need more of this, or we need less of that, or we need to move that out of there and put it on its own lot. That you have the ability to do, so you are not bound. In other words, it doesn't prevent you from doing your job going through the rest of the process. It just gives these folks and you a starting point so that you have something that makes sense moving forward.
Okay.
It's one of the higher level, basically identifying sort of as at the conceptual, almost conceptual level. These are the lands that we think we most need to protect. You're saying that it's along the stream corridor and it's the vegetative buffer. Those lands, and as you work through those, through your review, you're going to fill out the details of that.
Okay.
Probably sticking very closely to what you essentially approved conceptually.
Okay.
This might be part of the reservation in my envelope for the next step. And it's regarding code 12120, section C, density bonuses. And it gives us discretion based on public access for there's even more discussion in how, is that, I would like to see how we calculate the bonus,
It's
all of that.
what the manner in which they propose to calculate the bonus is in their conservation analysis. So, you have the ability, and one of the things I think we discussed early on, once you have a complete application at the preliminary level, board, so they will look at things and they will validate that density. In other words, yes, we're getting enough for it, or no, we're not. So there are times, yes, you have that ability to reevaluate that as well.
And then, looking at the town code, they have a section on workforce housing, but they also refer to it as affordable housing, and there is a bit of a distinction. Is this a workforce project, or is this an affordable housing project? As
HRH discussed that early on, and I'll be honest with you, I don't recall it, and I'd have to research. I think they were looking more on the affordable, and they were mixing terms as well, so.
Yeah, because affordable puts certain more legal obligations on the town to basically manage and administer.
No, that's changed.
That's still in the town code.
It's, that part of the code was amended, there's an amendment
Okay.
that does not obligate the town to manage or maintain any of it. But it's not in that
No,
part.
no, it's
It's an
in
appendix.
the code I use.
Yeah.
Okay, and Paul, can I ask one last question?
Sure.
And I believe I've asked this before, but I just want to make sure I understand it correctly. During the secret process, there will be a lot of detail around, I know there's a lot to around the stream and runoff into the stream. And I believe I asked at some point, obviously the applicant, the applicant's engineers will give us their opinions and their plans. There's an opportunity, if we have concern with that, to have the applicant engage a third party, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
No, can you articulate your question a little bit differently? The applicant would engage?
Oh, we would engage? Sorry, the board would engage.
The board has engaged.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
you're right.
that is the, John, you are the engineer if we say, I'm concerned,
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't understand this runoff situation. Okay.
But
He
we
does a
also,
little stormwater.
And if, to be blunt, if I don't understand something, or you're doing something out of the ordinary, I'll point you to someone who will understand. I'm not vain enough to think that I understand everything, but.
it has happened in the past that we as the board have retained other consultants, specialty consultants to review things on our behalf. For example, George James reviews our physical impact.
Okay.
We have a consultant that sometimes comes in and helps us with wetland mitigation or any kind of wetland impact. We have a landscape architect that sometimes comes in and gives us. So yes, we do have the
We've
ability.
availed people when it comes to wastewater treatment facilities and water supplies. Sometimes I'll recommend an expert that somebody comes in, are they really doing what?
Okay.
So, you'll find oftentimes we'll step back and say, yeah, somebody needs to do that. But you start with the basics, Paul, myself, and we go from there.
Yes.
All right, anybody else? All right, I need a motion to go into executive session.
No, not an executive
Oh,
session.
advice of counsel.
Advice of counsel.
Yeah.
We don't need a motion for that.
Okay, all right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.